model, what are different deployment model, what is AWS, what are fundamentals of DevOps, AWS, and all of that. Okay, right? So with that in mind, let us get started with our today's session. But before we start with this course, before we start with the discussing any technical part, it is important that we agree on some do's and don'ts as part of this course. Okay, so as I informed, we'll be meeting for next 15 session, including our today's session, right? So understand one thing very clearly. Throughout this entire course, all of you guys would be on mute. Throughout the course, each and everyone would be on mute. This is in the best experience or best interest of better learning experience, right? Because if not, if not, what happens is some background noise at someone's end would impact the entire session. So to avoid running into those kind of situation, by default, all of you would be on mute. If you have any questions, queries, doubts, something which you are not clear, right? Please use this question window where you gave your introduction. That same question window would act as a medium of communication for us, right? First thing. Second, as part of this course, we'll have a lot of hands-on. Wherever necessary, I will demonstrate hands-on. Okay, wherever necessary, we'll have hands-on demonstrated in detail. We'll discuss about every topic, right? Well, wherever necessary, I'll go in depth. There are certain topics which are just on a very high level, need to be known, so we'll discuss those accordingly. Third thing, I'm very sure all of you guys are pretty interested to get more and more detail about your AWS certification exam, more and more interested about your interview process and stuff, right? So let me tell you, we'll not be discussing about examination, we'll not be discussing about interview in our first 14 session. But at the same time, having that being said, at the same time, in our last session, right, in the last session as part of this particular course, I will give you a detailed guidance on how to go about preparing for your examination, how to go about preparing for your interview, what are some do's and don'ts from your examination point of view, what are some do's and don'ts from your interview point of view. All those detailed discussion would be held in our last session. So please do not expect examination details or more of examination discussion in every session. Why? Again, this is in the interest of time, in the interest to complete the course curriculum, and in the interest of gaining more detailed knowledge. We don't want to limit ourselves to the examination details, right? So to ensure each and everyone has a detailed understanding about the subject, we will keep that discussion towards the end of this course, right? Now this is going to be a 2-hour session on daily basis. So there would not be any breaks in between. There would be no breaks in between. It would be one single stretch. We'll have 2 hours session. All right. So are we all good with this? Everyone? Yes. Great. Thank you so much for that quick confirmation. So without any further delay, let's get started with our today's session. So in our today's session, we are going to start understanding what is cloud computing. We are going to start understanding what is cloud computing. Why is industry moving from on-premises towards the cloud, right? So to understand this in a better way, it is very important that you know how did cloud computing as a technology evolve? How did cloud computing as a technology evolve over the period of time? Because industry was working, IT industry was in existence even when there was something called as no cloud computing. When there was no cloud computing, even at that point of time, IT industry was in existence. It's not that only after the introduction of cloud computing, IT industry evolved, right? So, I would like to quickly take you all to at least 10 years back in the industry, 10 to 15 years back in the industry. If you recall 15 years back, if I'm an organization xyz.com, if I'm an organization xyz.com, right? So, as an organization, if I wanted to have my own IT infrastructure, right, I should have my own data center. I should have my own data center. Now, I believe everyone is aware on what is data center, and I believe you guys have seen data center. But just in case if you have not seen what your data center looks like, so I'll just open a quick Google image for you to have a look of it. So this is what we call it as data center. This is what we call it as data center. You have a huge land area. On that land area, you place multiple racks. On those multiple racks, you stack your physical servers. And these are neatly connected, interconnected, right? So when I say this physical servers, it includes your resources basically. When I say your resources, it includes your servers, your databases, your storage, your network, anything and everything that is needed to run your IT infrastructure is put up in your data center, right? So now 15 years back or 20 years back, the scenario was something like this, that as an organization, let's assume if I'm an organization xyz.com, right? So if I want my own IT infrastructure, then I should have my own data center. So for the very first thing that is needed is I should have a data center land area. I should have a data center land space or a land area. So that either I should get it on rent, or I should get it on lease, or I should have my own land area. Now obviously purchasing a land area requires money, capital expenditure, right? That's a capex investment that you need to make, right, if you want to have your own data center space. Now let's assume that as an organization I have my own data center space. Now once you get this data center space, you need to design your data center. You cannot just start using that land area, right? You cannot start racking your putting your racks and then stacking your servers on top of that. That's not how it works. Your data center has to be designed. When I say data center has to be designed, understand very clearly. When I say data center has to be designed, understand very clearly. That means what? That means what? You need to ensure there is a proper power system. There is redundant power supply in place. There is proper cooling system. You're meeting by the compliance requirement. You're meeting by the various guidelines of your data center design, right? So all of that again requires some additional capital expenditure. Now let's say you went ahead and did that additional capital expenses also, and you started deploying your racks on the data center, right? Something like this. You started deploying multiple racks, right? What we saw in the image, right? So you deployed racks. On those racks, you stacked your physical servers, right? On those racks, you stacked your physical servers. So it so happened that if you wanted, as an organization, if you wanted 100 servers, then you had 100 physical device. And if you wanted 500 servers, you had 500 different physical device. You had 500 different physical device, right? So that is somewhere a costly solution, because as an organization, if I wanted 100 servers, I need to procure 100 physical device, and obviously cost of procuring hardware, right, is pretty high. So again, a lot of capital expenses. So let's assume as an organization I went ahead and procured a lot of physical servers. which were needed by my organization, right? So now after procuring this physical servers, management and maintenance of this physical server is my organization's responsibility. Since management and maintenance is my responsibility, that means what? I should have a dedicated team to manage and maintain, and that will incur again some more capital expenditure and monthly recurring charges. Now let's assume that this data center space which I have with me is designed to host up to 150 servers. It is designed to accommodate how many? 150 physical servers. That is the space capacity, right? After 2 years down the line, let's assume my business is getting expanded, where I need to add some 200, 300 additional servers. Can I say I will need to extend my data center by procuring some more space? Yes or no? Yes. So again, data center expansion or data center space extension, can I say it would require some additional capital expenditure? Agree with me? Without any doubt, right? So that is a major problem in the industry. Now, other major problem was, you had one physical device for one server. Imagine as an organization, okay, as an organization, if I had 1,000 servers, then I had 1,000 physical device, right? So that is a major problem. Why? Because you require a lot of space. And now let's assume that I have an application XYZ running on my servers. Okay, pay attention to this part very clearly. I have my application XYZ running on my servers. The average CPU utilization of the server was somewhere around 50 to 60%, right? So all of this sudden, one fine day, the number of users or the user traffic increased on my application, and the CPU utilization spiked up from 60 to 90%. Now it increased from somewhere which was around 60 to 65%. Now it has increased from 65 to 90 to 95%. So if you're there in this particular situation and you're supposed to bring down the CPU utilization, what would you do? What would you do? Add more servers, right? Now add more servers, do load balancing. Now let's assume that I take your solution. Okay, I take your solution to add additional server in the infrastructure. Now remember 20 years back, if you wanted to have one server or if you wanted to have 10 server, right, in the industry there was one concept called as management approval. It is still in existence. It is still in existence. You need to get something called as management approval. Why? Because this involves some additional commercial. It involves some money, and wherever money is involved, without your management approving some budget, you cannot go ahead and procure anything, right? So you go ahead and you explain this situation to your management, you get their approval. After multiple rounds of discussion, you finally manage to get approval from your management, right? After getting approval from your management, you take this requirement and give it to your procurement team. Your procurement team, you give them all the specification. Your procurement team finds the suitable vendors in the market who can provide these servers of so and so configuration which you have specified. Now procurement team gets quotation from various vendors, right? Then they finalize one of those vendors depending on the commercials and other service terms agreed between your organization and the vendor. Your procurement team then raises purchase order with that particular vendor. Vendor, after receiving that purchase order, right, takes around 4 to 6 weeks to ship that physical server to your organization infrastructure or data center. So can I say this entire cycle somewhere takes bare minimum 2 months? Getting a new server in your infrastructure would take bare minimum 2 months. Do you all agree with this? Yes. Now help me understand, my dear friends. My server is running at 90 to 95% of CPU utilization. Do you think I can hold on to that server for 2 months? No. So what I'm trying to highlight here is scalability. Scalability is bigger challenge in your on-premise infrastructure. Do you all agree? You cannot scale your infrastructure on the fly. You cannot scale your infrastructure on the fly. So there are major problems which need to be addressed. One, every server requiring a physical device, and that eventually leading to a lot of space constraint in your data center is one major challenge. Capital expenditure is another challenge. Resource management is another major challenge. Scalability is one of the other challenge. So to address this problem, industry came up with some solutions to it. Now, what was the solution is industry wanted to reduce, data center space constraint related problem, and a lot of capital expense has to be cut down. So industry came up with the idea of virtualization. After your on-premise infrastructure, there came an era of virtualization. Now, what is the idea of virtualization? Understand very clearly. The idea of virtualization says is that if you want one server or you want 100 servers, you don't need to have 100 physical hardwares. The virtualization was mainly to get rid of your physical hardwares. If you can get rid of those physical hardwares, right, you can address your data center space constraint related challenge or problem. And also, since now you're not going to have physical hardware for every device, right, you will be able to bring down the overall cost for getting that new server deployed. Now in the era of virtualization, understand very clearly, in the era of virtualization, you had one physical device, okay, or you had multiple such physical device, let's assume some 10 such physical device. On those physical device, you had your virtual servers hosted. On those physical device, you had your virtual servers hosted. Now, on one single physical device, you can host hundreds and hundreds number of virtual server, hundreds of virtual server, and each of this virtual server would act as an independent entity. Each of this virtual server would act as an independent entity, right? Independent server, just like how it acted as when you had one dedicated hardware, right? Each of this virtual server act in a similar fashion. So after your on-premises, evolve the concept of your virtualization. So virtualization did help address the problem of your data center space constraint. It did help reduce the overall cost of procuring servers, right? And even the scalability to an extent was, addressed. But it still had its own challenges. The concept of virtualization had its own challenges. Now, what is this own challenge when I say, right? Understand very clearly. The concept of virtualization had challenges like you had to have backup created, like same set of servers you would have wanted to host on multiple physical devices. Why multiple physical device? Because if one of this physical device where you have hundreds of servers hosted, if this goes down, can I say all my application infrastructure would be impacted? Yes or no? One server on which you have multiple physical server hosted, right? If that physical server goes down, obviously on top of which you have hosted multiple virtual servers, all of that would go down. All of that would go down. So to address this, the alternate or the solution provided by them was you deploy this virtualization in high availability. So you have multiple, location or multiple physical server replicated, right? The same application you replicate it on two physical hardwares. Same set of 100 servers you replicate on two different physical hardwares. Now, this definitely acted as a solution, but along with it, can I say it also, brought other major challenge. Like one is where earlier you were only managing 100 servers. Now, since you are creating a backup, can I say now you'll have to manage 200 servers? Yes or no? Earlier, where you had to manage only 100 servers, now you will have to manage how many servers? 200 servers. Both 200 servers are running same application, not different, right? Because the other one is just a replica, right? And other major problem was when you wanted to procure this additional physical device, can I say it again led to some commercial implications? So obviously your cost, capital expenditure was back to your square one. It did not completely address the problem of a lot of capital expense, right? It did not address the problem of reduction in the capital expenses. So we came back to our square one. And apart from that, management was still under our responsibility. Data center management and all of that was still our responsibility. So these were challenges with your virtualization. Now, after your era of virtualization came the era of cloud computing. Are we all clear why industry is migrating from on-premises towards the cloud? Everyone? Yes. So now, what is cloud computing? The question in front of us is, what is cloud computing? And I'm sure each and everyone here in this session have different definition of cloud computing in different English. When I say in different English, you have different vocabulary to describe cloud computing. But I don't want to follow that vocabulary. I don't want you to talk those technical definitions or those bookish definition, right? So for a moment, let's forget all your bookish definition. Let's forget all those English definitions of cloud computing. Let's understand cloud computing in a very layman language. Since all of you guys are pretty new to cloud, I want to talk in very layman language so that you understand what exactly cloud computing is. Let's keep all our technology aside. Let's keep all our technology aside for a few minutes. Okay. And let's understand what exactly cloud computing is in a very layman language, right? In a very layman language. So let's assume that I want to have an house of my own. Pay attention to this. Nothing technical. Okay. I want to have an house of my own. What are the options in front of me? I need options. I want to have an house of my own. What are the options in front of me? Everyone, buy, rent, lease, build right from scratch, or ready for occupy apartment kind of. Okay, fantastic, right? Super. So I basically have two choices. I basically have two options or two choices, right? The option one is construct house from scratch. Construct house from scratch, right? Where I need to find a good land area and good locality first. Okay. Then I need to find good civil engineer. I need to find good architect. I need to find good interior designer. I need to sit along with them, finalize the design of the house. I need to ensure, they procure good raw materials and everything. So right from scratch, I need to look for what are the government permissions needed, local authorities permission needed, all of that I need to keep in place. So in this option, can I say right from scratch, anything and everything is my responsibility? Do you all agree? If I decide to construct a house from scratch, can I say anything and everything is my responsibility? Agree with me? This is option one in front of me. Now, second option which I have in front of me is instead of constructing this house from scratch, instead of constructing this house from scratch, what I can do is I can look for apartment in some good gated community. I can look for some apartment in some good gated community. So I'm not sure if everyone is aware of what is gated community. Just in case if you're not aware, this is what gated community looks like, where you have hundreds of apartment, right? And all the amenities and other resources are shared by the residents of that apartment, right? I put up on my screen. This is what we call it as gated communities, right? The second option in front of me is if I want to have a house of my own, is I find a good gated community. I go to builder's office and I say, hey, I want, 2,000 square feet of, living area. I want an apartment with so and so requirement, right? And builder shows me an apartment. I finalize one of the apartment and I book that apartment for myself. This is the second option in front of me. Now in option two, pay attention to this. Now in option two, the apartment design and everything which I have finalized, while delivering that apartment, if the design, if the outcome is not as expected or not what something which was promised to me, who would be responsible? Me or the builder? Who do you think would be responsible? The builder, obviously. Obviously, it would be the builder who would be responsible, right? Fantastic. Now, in option one, if I want swimming pool, if I want gymnasium, if I want party hall, if I want mini theater and all of that, in option one, who is gonna pump in capital needed for that? Me or someone else? Obviously, myself. It would be me who has to invest huge amount of capital if I want all those amenities. But in option two, if I want all those amenities, will I be pumping huge amount of investment there? Obviously, it would be the builder who would have to invest that money. Agree with me? Fantastic. Now, I want to understand from you guys, which one you think is a better choice, option one or option two? Obviously, your option two sounds much better because you don't have to take a lot of overhead, right? You don't have to invest huge amount of capital and still you're able to enjoy all the benefits. Agree with me? If you understood difference between this two, option one and option two, then you already understood what your cloud computing is. Option one is like having your own data center where anything and everything is your responsibility. Option one is like having your own data center where anything and everything is your responsibility, right from data center space to power to cooling system to expansion, keeping your servers, managing your servers, maintaining your servers, ensuring data center is as per the compliance and everything. Anything and everything, can I say it is your responsibility in your own data center? Agree with me? Yes. But option two, just like this builder, how these builders are appealing to all the house, all the people who want their own house, how these builders are appealing. Boss, why do you want to take overhead of constructing a house from the scratch? We have ready to occupy apartments with all the world class amenities. You just reserve an apartment for yourself and you just pay for that apartment and enjoy all the stay. Agree with me? That's how the builders are appealing to all the people. And that is why the concept of gated community is a very good or very hit concept. Agree with me? Similarly, just like these builders, cloud service providers across the globe, cloud service providers across the globe says the same message to all of us, to all the IT organization. Boss, why do you want to take overhead of managing, maintaining, designing, you know, and taking care of your data center? We have huge data center across the globe. You use our data center. You use our data center, host your infrastructure in our data center, and you pay for what you're using. You don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the data center design. You don't have to worry about the management of physical resources and stuff. All of that we will take care of. You just leverage our data center space. You host your infrastructure to run your services and applications, and you pay for what you're using. Are we all clear what is your cloud computing? Was that example easy to relate? Everyone? Right? So now that is what we call it as cloud computing. That is what we call it as cloud computing. Now, a lot of people will have concerns about security. How secure is this model? How secure is this model? Now, we'll talk about security of cloud at the later stage. We have, dedicated modules where we'll talk about the security and other aspects. But just to remove this myth, right, that cloud computing is not secure, I just want to ask you one simple question, right? Just because in a gated community you have 500 apartments in one single gated community, by any means, is it less secure? By any means, is it less secure? Because you have 500 apartments, does it mean that your gated communities are not secure? No, right? There is appropriate provision for it to ensure security and safety. Similarly, in cloud also, there are all the measures taken to ensure the security of every organization's data and infrastructure. Please rest assured that it would be discussed as we move into this course. For now, I just wanted to make you understand what cloud computing is. So are we all clear with that? Yes. So the definition, let's now talk about some technical definition, because so far we have not read any technical definitions of cloud computing. As per National Institute of Standard and Technology, USA, right? Cloud computing is a model for enabling convenient on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources, networks, servers, storage, applications, and services that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. This is what we call it as cloud computing. So if you want a server in cloud, you want a database in cloud, you want storage in cloud, you don't have to interact with any vendor. You don't have to reach out to cloud service provider. It is all available for you without any management interaction, right? We'll see demos around all of this as we progress. So now moving a bit ahead, we already talked about why cloud computing. So I'm not repeating. I gave you enough reason, right? So I'm not repeating this part. We will talk about, we will talk about cloud service model. We will talk about cloud service model. Now, when we are migrating from our on-premises towards the cloud, right? There are three different service model. You have infrastructure as a service, you have a platform as a service, and you have software as a service. When you migrate from your on-premises towards the cloud, there are three different service model: infrastructure as service, platform as a service, software as a service, right? So let's understand them one by one. So to understand this better, I would like to use this particular screen. Now, let's continue with our example of construction of house. Okay, let's take that non-technical example to better understand this. Now, as I was telling, in option one, I have to construct my house from scratch, right? So, can I say, as we agreed earlier also, can I say right from finding the land area to decide to deciding the design of house and deciding the interior of the house, everything would be my responsibility? In option one, yes. I cannot hold someone else accountable. I cannot hold someone else responsible for it. Anything and everything in option one is my responsibility, right? So that is the case with your on premises. Networking, storage, server, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, data application, anything and everything is your responsibility. If there is a network related issue in your database, data center, your problem. Storage related issues, your problem. If the servers are not working, the physical devices are not properly functioning, your problem. Virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, data application, anything and everything in your on-premise infrastructure is your responsibility. Just like how we discussed in our, when you want to construct a house from scratch, anything and everything is your responsibility. Right? Now talking about service models in cloud. We have three different service model. You have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. These are three different service model in cloud. Now let's take that example of gated community. Okay, we'll talk about this details later. Let's take the example of gated community. So let's say I go to one of the builder's office and I say that, hey, you know what? I'm looking for at least 2000 square feet of living area, right? I'm looking for at least 2000 square feet of living area in somewhere around in 14th or 15th floor. I'm looking for this land area in 14th or 15th floor. Now builder says, all right, not a problem. I'm looking for a apartment in 14th or 15th floor with 2000 square feet of living area. That is my requirement. I've given to the builder. So builder says, all right, not a problem. I can provide you. I have three choices. I have three choices for you. Choice number one, pay attention to this, everyone. I'm talking in very layman language so that all of you understand. So let me know if you want me to talk in layman examples or technical. Because I saw that everyone is new to cloud. So I thought to discuss in layman language. So let me know if you are comfortable with that. Bit technical as well. All right. Yeah. Taken that. Taken that then. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll first talk in layman language, then we'll talk technology so that you will be able to relate. Is that, good one? We'll first draw a rough outline in a layman language, and then we'll build technology around it so that you'll have a proper clarity. Okay. Awesome. Because a lot of people are new, so I just want to take them into consideration. Great. So I go to builder's office. I say that, you know what? I'm looking for 2000 square feet of living area, an apartment with minimum 2000 square feet of living area in 14th or 15th floor. So the builder says, I have choices for you. I have three options for you. The option number one is, in 14th floor, you're looking for 2000 square feet of living area. I can provide you that in 14th floor. Plain 2000 square feet of living area, right? Something like this. Now in this 2000 square feet of living area, how do you want to go about constructing? My job is to give you a plain land area in 14th floor. Now on this 2000 square feet, whether you're making as 1 BHK, 2 BHK, 3 bedroom, how you want to construct, you bring your own architect, you bring your own interior designer, and you construct this house. My job would be done the moment I give you that 2000 square feet of land area. My job would be done the moment I give you 2000 square feet of land area. On that 2000 square feet of area, you design how you want your house. You bring your own architect, you bring your own interior designer, and you design your house. As a builder, my responsibility is to provide you 2000 square feet of area in the 14th floor. Now, in this scenario, if the interior of the house does not come as expected, or if the architecture of the house is not as expected, who do you think would be responsible? Myself or the builder? Who do you think it would be responsible? Who would be responsible in this case? Obviously, it would be my responsibility. It would be my responsibility, not builder's responsibility. Why I say it would be my responsibility, understand very clearly, because builder's responsibility was only to provide plain land area. If builder is giving you plain land area, 2000 square feet, builder's responsibility is done. Now on that plain land area, whether you're constructing 2 BHK, whether you're constructing 3 BHK, where you're placing your kitchen, where you're placing your, drawing room, where you're placing your bedroom, all of that is your responsibility. And how you're deciding the interior, that is also your responsibility. Agree with me? Yes? So this was the choice one. Pay attention. This was the choice one provided by the builder. Obviously, it has some lower commercials, right? And it gave me a liberty The advantage of this choice was it gave me a liberty to design my house as per my requirement. Right? That was choice one. Now choice two, which builder gave me is, you know what? In 14th floor, pay attention. In 14th floor, I can give you an apartment with 2000 square feet of living area, and I will do this construction. I will do this construction. When I say construction, like builder will construct and give it, okay, this is your bedroom, this is your kitchen, this is your drawing room, this is your living area, this is your balcony. That kind of construction, logical segregation within the 2000 square feet is what builder will do and give it to me. Now on this, how do I want to decide what should be the interior of my bedroom, what should be the interior of my living room, what should be the interior of my kitchen, all of this, what color should be the wall paint, what kind of furnitures do I want, all of that builder says you call your own interior designer and you give your own touch. You design that by your own. Now in this setup, in this second choice, if the architect of house is not as expected, who do you think would be responsible? If the architecture of the house is not as expected, who do you think would be responsible? Myself or the builder? Obviously, it would be the builder's responsibility. It would be the builder's responsibility. Why? Because builder had decided this, that this is your kitchen, this is your drawing room, this is your bedroom. All of that construction was done. After constructing, they gave me an apartment, and on that apartment, it was kind of platform given to me. I had to bring my interior designer and design the interior of the house. Agree with me? It would be the builder's responsibility in choice two if the architecture is not good. Yes. But if the interior of the house is not good, who would be responsible? It would be my responsibility. Yes. So that is your choice two. That is your second choice. Now moving on to the third choice. The third choice which builder gave me was 14th floor, 2000 square feet of land area, living area, completely constructed, completely, designed, ready to occupy apartment, ready to occupy or ready to move in kind of apartment. Now, if the interior is not good, if the architecture is not good, whose responsibility do you think it would be? It would be the builder's responsibility. Agree with me? Did you all understand these three choices which builder gave me? Did you all understand these three choices which builder gave me? Fantastic. If you understood these three choices clearly, you already understood this three service model: infrastructure as service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Now in infrastructure as a service, pay attention. In infrastructure as a service, right? In case of option one, pay attention. Your cloud service provider would say that I will provide you the underlying infrastructure. When I say underlying infrastructure, which includes data center, on the data center network connectivity, storage, physical server, on that physical server your layer of virtualization. On top of that, you can decide which operating system you want for your server, what kind of middleware you want to run on that server, what kind of runtime libraries to be available in that server, what kind of data you want to store, and what kind of application you want to run. So your service provider, your cloud service provider's responsibility would be to provide you a plain server. On that plain server, You would decide what operating system, you would decide what middleware, you will decide what runtime, you will decide what application. If there is any problem pertaining operating system, middleware, runtime, application, data, it would be your responsibility. If there is any problem on these parameters, it would be your responsibility. If the operating system is vulnerable, it is your responsibility to patch and upgrade. If the middleware is not updated, it is your responsibility to upgrade it. If the runtimes are expired, you need to download the latest one. It is your responsibility. If the application is not functioning as expected, your responsibility. Cloud service provider would not be responsible for that. Cloud service provider would be responsible to provide you only the underlying infrastructure. On top of that infrastructure, anything which you're running would be your responsibility. That is your infrastructure as a service. What is your runtime? Runtime is nothing but a layer, a mid layer between your application and your operating system. Like your Tomcat, which is your middleware or your runtime. So when I say middleware, right, on top of, like if you're running a Java, you need Java libraries. If you're running Python, you need Python libraries. Yes or no? That will act as your runtime. The libraries, the dependencies, packages to run your application. And middleware is a kind of a layer which will enable interaction between your operating system and your application using the installed runtimes. Are we all clear? What is your infrastructure as a service in very technicals? Guys, understand middleware is nothing but an layer. By default, okay, I'll make it very easy to understand. By default, you have a Windows server. On Windows server, if you start running Java application, will it understand by default? Or on Windows server, you want to run some Python application, will it run? Will you be able to run that? No. Why no? Because your application is generating some commands. Application is generating some inputs in certain language, which your operating system is not able to understand, or your operating system is not able to interpret, right? So there is a need of middleware who would act as an intermediate between your operating system and your application. Then what is your runtime? Runtimes are those libraries so that your application can do those functions. Are we all clear? Example of your middleware is your Tomcat. The very basic and simple example is your Tomcat. Are we all clear with this? Middleware is nothing but an intermediate layer which will enable communication between your application and your operating system. Right? It is not your IDE. It is not your IDE. Don't interpret it as IDE. It is just a layer which will enable communication between your operating system and the application which you're running. For example, in your Windows machine, if you want to run a Python based application, can you by default run that? No. You require to have some intermediate. You need to install some prerequisites. Agree with me? Only then you can run your Python application. Why that prerequisites? Because the application which is installed, it is generating data in some Python language, which by default is not understood by your operating system. So to make it compatible with your operating system, you require a middleware, and runtimes are needed as a libraries. Are we all clear? Yes. Great. Thank you. So are we clear what is your infrastructure as service? Can I move forward? In very technical term, AWS or your service provider will give you infrastructure. On top of that infrastructure, you can run your application. Right from you will have control right from your operating system up to your application. Now going on to the next option, which is your platform as a service. Now platform as a service is nothing but your cloud service provider says, we will give you the underlying platform. We will take care of the operating system. We'll take care of the middleware. We'll take care of the runtime. We'll provide you platform. You bring your application code, host that application on our platform and run your application. We'll give you platform. On that platform, you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure, just like what you did in your infrastructure as service, right? If you want to run a Python based application, let us know. If you want to run a .NET based application, let us know. If you want to run a Java based application, let us know. We'll give you suitable platform, and that platform we will take care of. We'll ensure right kind of operating system, right kind of middleware, right kind of runtime, everything is available. You just focus on your application code. You just focus on your application code. Rest everything I will take care of. I will take care of high availability. I'll take care of backup. I'll take care of, data availability and everything. Your responsibility as an organization would be to focus on your application code. Any issues related to application, it would be your responsibility. Everything apart from that, I will take care of. That is your platform as a service. Are we all clear? So understand next option, which is your software as a service. Once we complete software as a service, right, we will take one examples and we'll be very clear. Okay, software as a service is everything taken care by your service provider. You don't have to worry about anything, right? Right from your networking up to your application, everything is taken care by your service provider. You just plug and play. You just use that service. Right? So now let's understand one with a very simple example. Let's assume Edureka as an organization. Edureka as an organization, their main business is learning and development. Edureka as an organization, their main business is learning and development. But as a part of their business requirement, they require a meeting infrastructure where all the participants, okay, and trainers can come together and discuss. Okay, agree with me? Yes or no? Edureka's main business is learning and development, but as a part of their business requirement, they require a application for meeting infrastructure. So Edureka assume they have their infrastructure on cloud. So Edureka had three choices in front of them. Edureka had three choices in front of them. The choice number one, Edureka team could have decided to develop a new meeting infrastructure tool. Just like how you have Cisco, WebEx, GoToWebinar and so on, right? Edureka could have developed their own in-house application or in-house tool, meeting infrastructure tool, right? So for that, can I say Edureka team should have a good developers who can write that code? Agree with me? If Edureka team wants to develop their own tool, they should have a good developers. They should have that capability to write a code which will, give you a meeting infrastructure tool. So can I say in that case, they should have a team to develop that application code and data accordingly, manage that data accordingly? Yes or no? There should be a team who can write a code to develop an application or to build an application. Now, since Edureka team is writing their own application code, can I say it would require a lot of customization? It is not using some ready to use tool. It is writing its own code. So when you are writing something on your own, that would have a lot of customization. So when you have a lot of customization needed, can I say you should have control over on your operating system, on the middleware, on the runtime? Agree with me? You should be able to granularly modify a lot of properties of your operating system. You should be able to modify a lot of properties of your middleware and runtime, because you want to make your application code, compatible with this operating system. Every application has its own compatibility level, if you are aware, right? Certain application you can only run on certain operating systems, right? So can I say, if Edureka team wants to have more and more granular control, then can I say they should go with infrastructure as a service? Agree with me? Because when they are writing their own application code, they would decide what kind of middleware they want. They would decide what kind of runtime libraries would be needed, what kind of dependent packages would be needed, what kind of functions that needs to be invoked, and which operating system would give a better performance. So since they are just asking for infrastructure, they say, okay, we have a team and my team is qualified enough. You just provide us infrastructure. We will tell you which operating system we will decide which operating system we want, what kind of middleware we want to run, whether we want to run Java, whether we want to run Tomcat, whether we want to run Python, whether we want to run .NET, which middleware we want to run, what kind of runtime libraries. For Java also, there are so many libraries available. It does not mean that you get everything, right? You will only need those libraries, those dependent packages which are compatible with your application and your operating system. So anything and everything would be Edureka's responsibility in this case, right from your operating system to application layer. Do you all agree with this? Am I making sense to all of you? Now talking about your platform as a service. Now talking about your platform as a service. Now Edureka team, let's say they were able to understand, they did some research, right? And they were able to understand, okay? And they were able to understand that the code which my team has written, the application code which we have written, we have a compatible platform available provided by the service provider. I would still need a team of developers to write amazing code to develop that tool or that application from scratch. But in this setup, what they say is, our application data or our application code, for that suitable compatibility, AWS or your service provider already have a compatible platform available. Let's say you return a code in Python and your service provider says, all right, not a problem. We have a Python middleware available with all the required libraries which you may need with compatible operating system. So can I say it makes more sense to go ahead with this option rather than option 1? Yes or no? Because it will reduce your overhead. Overhead of what? Overhead of managing and maintaining underlying infrastructure. Overhead of managing underlying operating system, middleware, runtime, and all of that. So that is your platform as a service. Now in this second setup, can I say now Edureka team does not need dedicated infra management, does not need humans or manpower to manage the infrastructure. Agree with me? They need just good developers. Yes, that is your platform as a service. Now Edureka team further realized, let's assume Edureka team further realized the wheel which we are trying to reinvent. Edureka team realized that wheel which we are trying to reinvent is already available in the market. There is ready to use tool available in the market, like your GoToWebinar, your Cisco WebEx, your Zoom. So many tools already available in the market. Then why should I, have a team of dedicated engineers writing the code day in, day out and developing this application from scratch and doing a reinvention of the same wheel? So let us go ahead and use some ready to use solutions in the market. That is your software as a service. Are we all clear? The technical part, I hope I have given you a much relatable example, right? So these are some third party tools available in the market. These are some third party tools available in the market. Okay. Now, what in case if we require some additional libraries in your platform as service, what will happen? In case if it is compatible, you are going to get that additional libraries. If not, then platform as a service is not a solution for your business requirement. You need to go ahead and use infrastructure as a service. Are we clear? If you want some third party libraries and all of that, it depends on the support from the service provider. If AWS says, no, we cannot support this, then your platform as a service is not a choice for your business use case. For that particular application use case, you need to consider using infrastructure as a service. Because this cannot be customized, platform cannot be, changed. The behavior of the platform cannot be changed on the basis of customer to customer. They have standard platform which will be provided to you. If your application is not compatible, consider using infrastructure as service when you want more and more granular control. Are we all clear? Java and Python comes in application or middleware. That is your middleware. See, you develop that application code, you write that code in Java or Python, right? Agree with me? Whenever you write your code, you write it in Java, you write it in .NET, you write it in Python, those supported syntax and language. Yes or no? Yes. So that syntax, that language, that that detail has to be understood by something. The operating system cannot understand all of this information. So for that purpose, we require middleware and runtime. Are we all clear now? What is your middleware and runtime? So as a service provider, let it be AWS, let it be Azure, let it be Google, let it be Oracle, any service provider, they are supposed to provide all the three service model. It's not that they can only provide infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. All the three is must. So runtimes are nothing but your libraries. Agree. Guys, are we all clear with the service model? Is everyone's question answered? I tried my level. Okay, so AWS is providing all the three service. Yes. You need to adopt as per your business requirement. Very true. If you want to have control, we can't even opt for software as service. If you want to have granular control, you cannot go ahead with software as service. For example, right now, Edureka team is using this GoToWebinar. So do you think Edureka team can define that, what should be the dashboard of GoToWebinar look like? No, right? They don't have that control. It is written by GoToWebinar team. They can just pay and use this service. We have demo for all the three. As we progress into this course, we'll have demonstrations for each of this. But from our technical standpoint of view, are we all clear? Can I move forward? Awesome. Thank you. So now moving a bit forward. Talking about the next part, which is your cloud deployment model. There are 4 different deployment model in cloud. You have public cloud, private cloud, community cloud, and hybrid cloud. There are 4 different deployment model in cloud: public, private, community, and hybrid. Now, what is public cloud? What is your private cloud? What is your community cloud? Let's understand them one by one. Okay. Public cloud, to make it easy for everyone to understand. Let's assume that I want to travel from location A to location B. I have booked a seat for myself in an airplane. Okay. For this particular journey from location A to location B, I've reserved a seat for myself in a plane. So, can I say I have complete ownership of that particular flight? Can I say that I have complete ownership of that particular flight? No. Obviously, no. But will it be right on my part if I say I have complete ownership of that particular seat which I reserved for that particular journey while I am sharing my flight with 200 other passengers? Yes. Right? That is your public cloud. If you understood this, you understood what your public cloud is. That is what I call it as public cloud. Okay. Public cloud is where, let's assume this is AWS data center. In AWS data center, they have this physical device. On this physical host, your virtual server is created, right? So this underlying physical device is not dedicated for you to use. Instead, on the same physical server, it could be possible some other organization, some other industry, some other business could also be hosting their servers. It could even be your competitor. It could be possible that your server and your competitor server is sharing the same underlying physical, infrastructure. When you don't have a dedicated infrastructure, you're sharing the infrastructure, right? That is what we call it as public cloud deployment. Are we all clear? Everyone? The underlying infrastructure is not reserved or not dedicated for you to use alone. It is shared. That is what we call it as public cloud deployment model. Now, having that being said, since you and your competitor, let's assume, are sharing the same underlying physical infrastructure, it does not mean that you can barge into their server or they can barge into your server. This is not allowed. This is not allowed. Right? Though your server, your virtual server and your competitor's virtual server are put up on the same physical infrastructure, you are sharing that same physical infrastructure, which is what we refer to as public cloud, right? Though we are sharing the same infrastructure, it does not mean that you can access their resources or they can access your resources. Are we clear what is your public cloud? Just like how in a gated community you have hundreds of apartments, you cannot randomly enter anyone's apartment without their consent. Agree with me? Same concept goes with your public cloud. So next is your private cloud. Next is your private cloud. Pay attention. Private cloud is like flying in your own chartered plane. Private cloud is like flying in your own chartered plane, right? When I say having your own chartered plane, please understand, that means you have a dedicated infrastructure for your organization to use. You're not sharing infrastructure with any organization. That infrastructure is completely reserved for you to use. No sharing of infrastructure. Just like how it happens in your private chartered plane. Are you sharing that chartered plane with anyone? No. Agree with me? It is completely for you. So can I say you have complete control over it? Let's say from when you started from your house, right? You made your mind that you will fly from point A to point B. But in mid-air, you changed your mind and you say, no, let's divert the flight towards point C, right? Do you have that control on it? Can you define that? Can you dictate that? Obviously, yes. Because it is your private jet. So you can, even in the mid-air, you can ask the pilot to divert the route. Agree? So that is your private cloud deployment model. Now comes the question, Prashant, when we have public cloud, what was the necessity to have a private cloud? When you say public cloud is also safe, secure, right? Then what was the necessity to have a private cloud deployment model? Please understand very clearly. You have gated community concepts. Does the president and prime minister of your countries live in a gated community or they have their own private bungalows? Understand the question very clearly. Though in your city you have lot of gated communities with all the luxuries, but your president, prime minister of your country, do they live in gated community? Obviously no. Obviously no. They have their own private bungalows for the purpose of privacy, right? Because imagine if they live in a gated community at morning 9 o'clock, let's assume the prime ministers or presidents convoy is to live, they would block all your traffic. For next 2 hours, you cannot live out of your gated community, right? Because there are a lot of protocols, there are a lot of compliances which are to be adhered for president and prime minister. Agree with me? Similarly, do you think organization like reserve banks of your country, organization like NASA, organization like DRDO, organization like US Army, organization like Indian armies, or central banks of your countries, right? Do you think they can host their infrastructure in public cloud? Would they want to take even slightest of security chances? No. So those kind of organization where they would want complete granular control, in public cloud you don't have granular control. In public cloud you don't have complete granular control on the infrastructure, because the underlying infrastructure is managed and maintained by your service provider, and it is designed in such a way that every organization have a better experience hosting their infrastructure here. So it is only taking care of certain standard rules and regulations, right? But in private cloud, since that infrastructure is completely reserved for you to use, right? You have more and more granular control. Are we all clear what is your public cloud and what is your private cloud? Can I move forward? Does it mean in AWS entire data center there is a specific space where the server is dedicated to the user? It's not only the server, entire data center dedication. When we say public private cloud deployment, it is kind of entire data center dedicated for one organization. Not just one specific server, okay? That is your private cloud deployment model. Now talking about the next part, which is your community cloud. Talking about the next part, which is your community cloud. Understand very clearly what is your, we'll talk about hybrid cloud later. We'll talk about community cloud first. Community cloud is, understand very clearly, who will provide your private cloud? All the cloud service provider, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, they provide private cloud also. They manage private cloud as well. All right. Next, talking about your community cloud. Please understand very clearly. When I say community, what do you infer by that? Forget cloud part. In general terms, what does term community implies? What is the literal meaning of community? Group. Okay. Can I say community is nothing but a group of like-minded people? See, group is not a big deal, but group of like-minded people. Yes. Can I say that would be an apt, definition of community? Group of like-minded organization, group of like-minded people. Yes. So your community cloud is also something like that. Please understand very clearly. Your community cloud is also similar to that. Now there are a lot of small banks. There are a lot of small banks. Because of the government rules, regulations, compliance, and other factors, they are not allowed to host their infrastructure in public cloud. Let's assume. Let's assume that there are government rules, regulations, guidelines, which does not allow these banks to host their infrastructure in public cloud. Okay. And they are not big enough to afford a private cloud space because private cloud is costly. They are not big enough to afford a private cloud. So government says that if you want to host your infrastructure in cloud, it should meet by so and so guidelines. It has set up a list of guidelines and compliances. You have to follow those compliance and guidelines. If you're able to satisfy those needs, then keep your infrastructure in cloud. Public cloud, let's assume that public cloud does not meet those requirements of the governments. So I obviously cannot host my infrastructure in public cloud, and private cloud is something out of my range of affordation. I cannot afford that, right? So then understand community cloud is where, like me, there could be multiple such small banks. We all such small banks, can I say we are supposed to adhere by common government rules, regulations, guidelines and stuff? Yes or no? Yes, agree with me? We are all supposed to adhere by common government rules, regulations and guidelines. So we will be able to move to cloud if the underlying infrastructure and space can be designed as per our requirement, like the common government rules, regulations. Yes or no? If service provider provides us the infrastructure which is compatible with the ask of government rules, regulations and stuff, then can I say, like me, any banks can host their infrastructure in that? So it is like dedicating your cloud infrastructure for certain group of organizations, group or certain like-minded organization, like only banks. If the infrastructure is designed keeping the guidelines, compliance and other factors of the bank, only banking related business can host their infrastructure there, not any other organization. Are we clear what is your community cloud? Can I move forward? Great. Now what is hybrid cloud? It's very simple. When you have your infrastructure put up in more than one kind of cloud deployment model, that is referred to as hybrid cloud. Let's say as an organization, you have 10 applications. So out of 10 application, government says that I'm not worried for this 3 application, A, B and C. You can host it in public cloud also. But for remaining 7 application, I want to ensure that you follow this government rules, regulations and guidelines. So what you do is you keep those 3 application in public cloud, which is cheaper, and keep remaining 7 application in your community cloud. So this mix and match combination of deploying your infrastructure is what we call it as hybrid cloud. So it can be combination of public, private, private, community, community, public, any mix and match combination. You call that as a hybrid cloud deployment. Are we all clear? Everyone? As per my understanding, server is nothing but data center. No, server is not your data center. Data center, I showed you image in the beginning. Server is one of the component in the data center. Hybrid, understand it is nothing but mix and match combination of your deployment. Certain infrastructure you hosted in public, certain you hosted in private or in community. This mix and match combination is what we call it as hybrid. Data backup responsibility in middleware, me or cloud depends on which service model you are going with. If it is infrastructure as service, it is your responsibility. In case of your platform as service and software as service, it would be your service provider's responsibility. When AWS provides private cloud, then I think security is same as in public cloud. No, it is customized as per the requirement of the organization who is opting for private cloud. Community cloud is nothing but infrastructure dedicated for like-minded organization. You have a custom infrastructure created. You have a custom infrastructure created for, you know, a group of banks. That is your community cloud, Vijaya Lakshmi. You said private cloud is entire data center. That is very big. Or it is just some space in data center for private cloud. So it depends on the size of your organization. You are a big enough organization like Reserve Bank. So they would require a huge infrastructure. So they cannot allocate a small space in their existing data center. You would obviously want it completely isolated. So that is why private cloud will have their own dedicated data center. They are going to charge you for that. How security is shared, we will discuss in our module 2. How security is taken care of, we will discuss that in our module 2. Don't worry. AWS is storing everything in physical host. So how will guarantee about our application resiliency? Don't worry, we will discuss that also. When we come to AWS discussion, we'll talk about that. Let's not be in hurry. Does it mean that public cloud is not very secure? So I think right in the beginning, when I started talking about public cloud, I said there is a myth that it is not secure. It is completely safe and secure, but you don't have granular control on your public cloud. Please pay attention. I already repeated this information twice by now. Whatever, whatever is reality to related to infrastructure is my responsibility. So I think I showed you this image. What is your responsibility in your infrastructure as service? Here, managed by user, OS, middleware, runtime, data application. It is your responsibility in your infrastructure as service. Please look into this image. How the resources are distributed in hybrid cloud, it is your organization call. How many applications you want to keep it in public, how many you want to keep it in private, how many you want to keep it in community. It is your business requirement. You would decide that. What all components in a private data center it contains? See, data center contains your server, storage, database, network, so many other components. Data center has a lot of components. Please check that out on Google. We are not going in, low level details of that. Are we all clear with this? Is everyone's question answered? Can I move forward? Thank you. So this is a brief comparison of different cloud service provider, how similar services in your AWS, Azure, and Google, they are referred. Like for example, a storage service in AWS is called as S3. Same storage service in Azure is called as blob storage, and same storage in GCP is called as storage. Servers in AWS are referred to as EC2. Servers in Azure are referred to as virtual machines, and same servers in your Google Cloud Platform are referred to as compute engines. Right? So likewise for different services, same technology, different service provider have different terms and terminology. This is available for you to refer. Let's move forward. Now talking about AWS, Amazon Web Services. Talking about AWS, which is nothing but your Amazon Web Services. Right? Now we all know AWS or Amazon as an organization is a US based organization, right? And it is one of the earliest players. In the year 2006, Amazon was the first organization to start cloud computing as a services. Only after that, other players like your Azure, Google, and all of that, joined the race. AWS or Amazon was the first organization to start cloud computing. AWS provides around 175 plus services. Okay, it offers compute, database, storage, content delivery, and other resources to help business scale and grow. Client security or customer security is of significant concern for AWS, right? So their infrastructure is successfully satisfying the security concerns of military, global bank, and other high sensitivity organization. To ensure the security is completely taken care of so that AWS customer can, rest assured that their infrastructure is safe and secure. AWS have around 230 security, compliance, and governance services with 90 security standards and compliance certifications. And out of 175 plus services, around 117 AWS services can encrypt your data. Are we all clear? So those who had some doubts about the security, I hope these numbers are giving you some insight that yes, security is also taken into consideration. Right? So now moving on to discuss the next part of discussion, next part here. Benefits of AWS: it is cost effective, dominant market position, scalable, provides high performance, it is easy to use, reliable, secure, flexible, can support large organization. Right? All of these are very generic. I don't want to elaborate on this. AWS global infrastructure. AWS global infrastructure. Okay. AWS as an organization, though it is based out of US, but it has its infrastructure across the globe. To ensure it has global footprint, AWS has put up its infrastructure across the globe. Now, this is the world map you see on your screen. And in this world map, if you notice, there are a lot of blues and oranges. There are a lot of blue colors and orange color legends. The one in the blue are existing AWS locations. The one in the blue are existing AWS locations from where AWS is providing these cloud computing services to the customer. Those are operational locations of AWS. The one in the orange are your coming soon location, where the work is in progress, where AWS is setting up its data center, right? Those are your orange color. So currently, if I have to tell the numbers, currently AWS have 25 geographic region. The one in the blue are called as regions. Pay attention. This one in the blue are called as region. For example, this is your Mumbai region. This is your Bahrain region, right? This is your Cape Town region. This is your Sao Paulo region, Canada Central region, North Virginia region. So currently there are 25 geographical regions. Currently there are 25 geographical regions. And there are 81 availability zone. Each region has availability zone within. Like if I say Mumbai, it has 3 availability zone. If I say Singapore, it has 3 availability zone. If I say Sydney, it has 3 availability zone. If I say Hong Kong, it has 3 availability zone. So every region has availability zones, right? So currently there are 25 regions and 81 availability zones, where 7 more regions and 21 more availability zones are announced where the work is in progress. So these are your availability regions, 7 more regions, and in this 7 region there would be 21 more availability zones, which is in progress. The work is in progress. Now comes a question of interest. What is region and what is availability zone? What is region and what is your availability zone? Right? Understand very clearly. Understand very clearly. Definition of region. Pay attention. Okay. A group of data center. A group of data center in certain part of continent is what we call it as a region. I repeat myself. A group of data center in certain part of continent is what we call it as region. For it to be called as a region, there should be minimum 2 availability zones. A group of data center in certain part of continent is what we call it as a region. For it to be called as a region, there should be minimum 2 availability zone. Each individual physical data center, each individual physical data center is what we call it as availability zone. Are we all clear? A group of data center in certain part of continent is what we call it as a region. For it to be called as a region, there should be minimum 2 availability zone. Each individual availability zone is nothing but your physical data center. Each individual physical data center is what we call it as availability zone. Are we all clear? Can I have quick confirmation? All right. But sometimes it might become difficult to remember this. It might become difficult to remember this. So I'll make it very easy. I would like to take you all to your school days once quickly. Okay. In your schools, pay attention to this example. You'll understand what is region and availability zone. Keep your hands away from keyboard for a moment. Just pay attention to my words. In your school days, if you recall, we had different standards: 6 standard, 7 standard, 8 standard, 9 standard, and so on. And under each of this class, we had different sections: 6 standard, 8 standard A section, 8 standard B section, 8 standard C section, and so on. Yes or no? In school, we had different classes: 6 standard, 7 standard, 8 standard, and so on. And under each standard, we had different section: 8 standard A section, B section, C section, and so on. Now help me understand, is 8 standard a physical location or a logical location? Is 8 standard a physical location or a logical location? 8 standard is your logical location. Can I say 8 standard A section, B section, C section, those are your physical location? Yes. Now replace that 8 standard with region and replace availability zones with your sections. You will understand everything. I repeat my definition once again now that you have some outline in your mind, right? A group of data center in certain part of continent is what we call it as a region. For it to be called as a region, there should be minimum 2 availability zone. Each individual physical data center is what we call it as availability zone. Are we clear? Everyone, are we clear with this? What is your region and what is your availability zones?
Remember the example of school. I think that would simplify a lot of complex English. Physical data center means the physical space managed by AWS, the physical location where your hardwares of AWS are placed. Cool. So I think that's time's up now for our today's session. The time is up. So just before you log out, I just need 2 more minutes from all of you. Okay. So this was the first session. So I want to quickly touch base with everyone and understand, is the speed good enough? Is the pace good enough? Is the language comfortable with everyone? Yes. And I hope the layman examples which I have given is definitely helping all of you. Fantastic. Because I just wanted to ensure before we move any forward, we can follow the same way, right? So obviously today's session was, introductory session. So we had a lot of details to go into, right? So once we progress further discussing technicals, we might have to increase our pace a little bit. Okay. And we might have to increase our level of standard of technicals. So please be prepared for that as well. I don't tell that, we'll talk in layman example throughout this course. Wherever applicable, I'll try to make it easy for everyone to understand. That is something which you can rest assured of. But at the same time, today, why I spoke in very layman language, the builder, the school, the, such layman examples, so that you understand cloud is not a rocket science. It's all something from what we have, which we see in and around us. I wanted to break that myth in your mind that cloud is something rocket science. Okay, that is why we went a bit more detailed and we were a bit slow today. But as we progress, definitely I'm not saying that right tomorrow I'll increase my speed. Slowly and gradually, as we walk down into this course, we'll have more, technicals coming in, technical jargons coming in, more and more, pace slowly and gradually increasing. So please prepare for that as well. Now, those who are completely new to cloud, by humble request, log into learning.edureka.co. Okay, log into learning.edureka.co. You must have received your credentials. Please go through these presentations, right? Please go through this presentation in advance before you come back for your next session. That will help you to become familiar with certain terms and terminologies. Okay, so humble request to all of you, like say example, today we completed up to, your slide number 35, 40. Let's assume we completed up to 40, right? So tomorrow when we come back, we'll continue from here. So I would request you guys to at least go through the remaining slides. Please do some homework from your end, spend some 20-30 minutes so that it would help you in the session. By doing that, what would be the advantages? Maybe same small things I'll not have to repeat over and over again and again. Even you will be able to grasp the subject. Much more information can be observed while I talk. And third, we'll have a lot of additional information coming in. Because when I repeat things, somewhere we don't enter the details of the subject, which I definitely know that you would not want it. You would want to be expert at it. You would want to hear more and more details. So for that purpose, I would need your support and cooperation. So as a token of your support and cooperation, please log into the LMS portal, the learning.edureka.co portal. Try to go through these slides in advance. If you find any term which is very foreign to you, try to do some quick Google search. Just basic understanding should be enough. I don't want you to learn it on your own. That is not what I'm expecting from you. Just at least, when you listen to those terminologies or terms, you're not blank. That is the only mindset behind it. Okay. So with that note, I would rest my words for our today's session. I'll see you all tomorrow. I hope you all enjoyed the session. There would be a feedback form coming up on your screen. Please ensure you mark your feedbacks without fail. If you enjoyed my session, feel free to mark it as an excellent, because excellent is the only positive feedback. Anything apart from excellent would be considered as a negative feedback, right? So with that note, thank you so much for all your time. If anyone has any questions, please do let me know. Would we get the recording for this sessions? Absolutely. Your session recording would be available in the LMS portal. You need to log into your batch, right? You need to log into your batch and you can access your session recording. So under your batch, say this course content, this is where you'll find your slides, and class recording, this is where you'll find your recordings. After, once I close out today's session, it would be uploaded here in some time, and you'll have lifetime access to this portal. All right. Cool. Any other question from anyone? Any other questions? All right. If no further question, then I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you once again for all your patience. There is a question in the window, Nimai. Which question, please? Maybe I could have missed your question because there are so many questions coming up in the question window. So it could be possible that I missed your question. Please let me know what is your question, Nimai. Okay, I replied it already, right? Yeah. Thank you. Cool. Then if no further question, then thank you so much for all your time and patience. I'll see you all tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye. Take care. Wish you all a great evening, great day ahead. Signing off for the day, guys.